I'm being given the sign to go, so I'm going to go and not leave, but begin. And so my name is John David Berdahl. Hello, everyone. I do hope that you are doing well, and it's great to be here. Just yesterday, I had screenings for the documentary film that I completed called I'll Start From Here. And that went very, very well. It's about mental wellness, personal stories, and hope in Fargo, Moorhead. And so that's where I'm from, Fargo, Moorhead in the American Midwest. And now I can take in some of that feedback that I had received and work on that film. And so really, really swell, really just a really special occasion. And so, yeah, I'm John David Berdahl. I'm an artist. I'm an Aspie writer, artist, musician here in Fargo, Moorhead, Fargo, North Dakota, Moorhead, Minnesota. And today I'm going to be talking about something that's been a significant part of the lives of definitely the clients that I've worked with. And it's supposed to be a significant part of the life that I've led too. Although I haven't not so much experienced it a whole bunch, but I have researched it a whole bunch and attempted to figure out how does it work and how is it that we're supposed to, I don't know, break those sorts of cycles or get ourselves out of those loops, right? When there's difficulty in processing something and feeling something especially. So I'm going to talk about anger rumination. And I know it affects many other individuals on the spectrum. Okay. And yeah, so thank you so much for allowing me to present on this topic because it has been something that has fascinated me a whole bunch. And yeah, I'm not certain if I get stuck in sort of anger myself, but rumination definitely. And just thinking about something and thinking about something and thinking about something and definitely perhaps reliving something again and again and again. So I've got a presentation here. Let's go screen, start. There we go. So there we are. So let's skip to this one. All right. So I've got that right there. Oops. That's funny. There we go. Okay. Nice. So we'll move that sort of right there. Okay. So yes, we got this breaking the cycle, understanding and managing autistic rumination. Yeah, a guide to understanding and managing repetitive thought patterns. Because, saying anger rumination with this sort of topic, I do believe people will begin to think that it's like it's only about anger, where when you just, when you're stuck in this sort of pattern of thinking, and you can't get yourself out of it, that can be so very difficult for so many people. And so, yeah, so what makes me qualified to talk about this? Well, for years, I was undiagnosed, misdiagnosed, and then, well, I guess undiagnosed and misdiagnosed, and no one really knew what it was that made me so, I guess, myself or unique or atypical. And yeah, I would definitely process the sensory input in a certain way. I would think about things. I wouldn't get stuck in anger, or I wouldn't be incensed, or I wouldn't be outraged or raged or enraged. I would continue to think about something long after others had, and those of us on the spectrum who do that sort of thing, or who exhibit, that sort of characteristic or trait, we get told to quit overthinking, and sometimes we need to think that much, which is much more than others, just to understand what's going on around us, and so, yeah, definitely I was experiencing autistic rumination, and definitely there were probably moments where I was feeling overwhelmed and didn't even understand what that sort of meant, and I couldn't just stop thinking about something, right? That experience ignited a passion in me to understand why this was happening and to find ways to manage it. And that's what I want to share with you today. I really hope that you can find yourself in this presentation. Let's move on to the next slide. Let's move this over here. There we go. Great. So let's get down to basics. What is autistic rumination? Put simply, it's repetitive, intrusive thinking that focuses on distressing experiences or emotions. It's like a mental hamster wheel, constantly replaying negative thoughts or anxieties. The key characteristics, are inflexible thinking, a difficulty shifting away from those thoughts, a tendency to dwell on the negative, and a real difficulty breaking free from the cycle. It's a form of perseverative cognition, something we know is very common on the autistic spectrum, and that's definitely something that I've experienced, yeah. And I just did it yesterday. I perseverated quite a bit. I was presenting to a police department, Moorhead, at the Law Enforcement Training Center in Moorhead, Minnesota. And yeah, I perseverated during, I tell people that's what I'm doing during this presentation. I'm going to come back around. I'm going to stay in the groove. I'm going to stay in the pattern. I'm going to stay in the sequence. I'm going to stay in the sort of routine, right, of how it is that I did this before. And I'll do it again. And I'll do it again. And I'll do it again. And I get right back on topic. If someone asks a question, right, I get right back to getting to the end of what it is that I'm supposed to be talking about. And for me, that goes really well. For others, you know, and it impresses them. But because I've been diagnosed correctly and I know how to aim the qualities that I've got, you know, that looks really impressive. But for those who don't know how to be intentional about the perseverative nature that they've got, you know, that can be, some situations can be rather difficult. And this isn't the same as just general worry, okay, rumination. This rumination has an intensity and inflexibility that's tied directly to some core autistic experiences. Okay, let's move along here. There. So what does this look like in practice? How do you recognize autistic rumination? Well, here are a couple common signs. Here we go. Do you experience, there we go, repetitive thoughts, constantly reviewing past conversations in your head, searching for errors, even years later? Distress focus, dwelling on negative feelings or perceived failures? Did you miss a social cue, say something wrong, appear to be insensitive, etc.? Obsessive thinking, experiencing intrusive thoughts that are hard to control, leading to anxiety or panic, loops of concern, repetitive worries about uncertainties, even small changes in routines or plans. These aren't things you are, these are things you do. Okay? Try to remember that. Okay, so why does this happen? It's usually not one single reason, but a combination of factors. Okay? High anxiety levels. Many autistic individuals experience heightened anxiety. Okay? I myself do not. I've presented, thank you so much, Autism Connect, for allowing me to present so many times and talk about, you know, I don't really experience anxiety. I don't really experience embarrassment, hesitation, apprehension, nervousness because of alexithymia co-occurring and often what people consider a trait of autism. I don't really experience emotions in a very typical or normative way intrinsically. So that's not really what fuels the rumination that I experience. For me, it's more in kind of intense curiosity. And maybe that's just anxiety for me. So yeah, heightened anxiety, and this can absolutely trigger rumination. It's like your brain is constantly on high alert looking for potential threats. Negative past experiences, okay? Difficulties in social situations, past trauma, even seemingly small negative interactions can all contribute to a cycle of rumination. The brain is trying to learn but gets stuck on repeat. Difficulty with emotional regulation. If you have challenges identifying or managing your emotions, it can make rumination worse. Feeling overwhelmed and not knowing how to process it can lead to dwelling on the negative. Sensory overload. Don't underestimate the impact of sensory overload. When your senses are overwhelmed, it can trigger anxiety and, in turn, rumination. It is important to remember that these are vulnerabilities, not inherent flaws. Let's move this over here. There. So, autistic rumination in men and women. Okay, I think this is crucial. This is very, very crucial that we talk about this. It's also important to consider that rumination can manifest differently in men and women on the spectrum. Now, these are generalizations, so please keep in mind that everyone's experience is unique. Okay? Men, all right? How does it manifest? What does it look like? Tending towards more rigid, problem solving, focused rumination, often centered around decoding social rules. I think you need to know that other guys on the spectrum are having the same issue, okay, that you probably are or that others probably are. Women often experience a broader emotional range in their rumination, focusing on emotional nuances in social situations. This is not to say that they are incapable, right, but more likely that they have greater sensitivity in this context, okay? And then both, regardless of gender, cognitive rigidity, heightened anxiety, and perseverative cognition all play a role. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. Here we go. So the risk of misdiagnosis, all right, and I myself have been misdiagnosed I was diagnosed bipolar, and then I was diagnosed PTSD, borderline personality disorder, OCD, and finally, I was diagnosed correctly with autism spectrum disorder. And, and a lot of different sort of methods and therapies were applied to my, I suppose, overall sort of health or recovery at the time, and I guess now it's uncovery. I suppose I had to call it that. It was uncovered, that I live on the autism spectrum, or that's where I reside, and that has been so helpful for me. So the risk of misdiagnosis. This is a critical point. Autistic rumination can easily be misdiagnosed, as well as autism itself. Okay. Uh, just as anxiety or depression can be misdiagnosed, the symptoms do overlap. Okay. A clinician who isn't familiar with autistic thinking might misinterpret these thought loops as simply anxiety driven or depressive rumination and not recognize the underlying autistic traits. Okay. And that's definitely something that happened to me. That's why for borderline or bipolar disorder, I was so emotionally dysregulated because I had been away from what had scaffolded me or supported me for so long. I was just incredibly imbalanced. And so I was in this place of just wild, or I suppose, extreme types of behavior. I wasn't violent at all, but I did not know how it was that I was supposed to experience the feelings that I do have, even though they may seem foreign to me sometimes still or unreal. I just didn't know what I was supposed to do with them, or as I had said, how to aim them. So yeah, that's something that definitely consider that, how it can look like one thing or another. These autistic traits can look like depression, look like anxiety. And that's not to say that that's not going on, and masking, right? Consciously or unconsciously hiding autistic traits makes it even harder to get an accurate diagnosis. Okay, that's why it's so important to seek out specialists who are knowledgeable about neurodiversity and autism informed assessment. And as I had just been saying yesterday, I do believe that it takes one to help one too. And that if there is, if you're lucky enough to have a referral and that you do have an appointment or a meeting or an occasion, right, an opportunity to speak with a specialist, but it's a ways away, that's where support groups come in. That's where organizations come in. That's the part that they have to play, like Autism Connect and like so many organizations that I've been a part of, that I've presented for. You can reach out to them and reach out to individuals who are autistic, who do live, right, the lifestyle or live in that culture. And that's what I've been considering, neurodivergence. It's definitely become its own culture. We're having cross-cultural conversations about these types of issues now. And it's just phenomenal. That it's grown in that way. It's that it's, I suppose, transformed or transcended, right? Or it has been transvaluated. Okay, that it was something bad and now it's something good. It's a badge of honor to be autistic or ADHD or OCD, even how it trends on social media. It's phenomenal. But so what is the point of that? So yeah, reaching out to, again, groups, organizations, individuals, and asking them about their own experiences while it is that you do wait to speak to a specialist, and not to just what definitely to supplement what it is, your education, right, and your journey towards being more well and more well informed. Let's move on to the next slide. There we go. Strategies to integrate and manage rumination. Okay, now for the good stuff. What can we do to break free from these thought loops, right? And I do believe that is the whole point of this sort of presentation. And that is, how is it that we can function better or operate better or fill out? And I tell people, don't fit in, fill out. You'll hear me saying that, don't fit in, fill out. There's no such thing as perfect. And if it's perfect, it's not real. That's what I tell individuals, right? There are several practical strategies we can use, okay, to break free from these thought loops, all right? Mindfulness practices, deep breathing exercises, body scans, okay? These can help you become more aware of your thoughts and feelings in the present moment without judgment. We actually try a quick one. We'll actually try a quick one for a few minutes, okay? And so just take a moment, Perhaps close your eyes, take some deep breaths. Some people don't not so much know how to take deep breaths, but they're not accustomed to taking deep breaths. They're not accustomed to just settling, and I've had to tell some clients and some students that when you breathe these deep breaths, breathe like you're listening to the ocean. Breathe the sound of the ocean in through your nose. That's the ocean, the tide coming in, and then out through your mouth. And that's the ocean going out, right? Tide coming in, tide going out. Sort of body scan too, starting with your feet. You can move your toes, and just pay attention to your toes with your eyes closed, of course. I just rhymed there. That's nice. And then just moving up, perhaps kind of tensing your muscles or flexing your muscles, right? In your calves, in your knees, and so on, moving up, and just being aware of your body and being aware of how your body feels, because how your body feels is often how you feel too. So that can be so helpful. I do believe that's just helped me doing that type of scan and being that mindful. Structured routines, okay, predictability can significantly reduce anxiety. So establishing a consistent daily routine is key. This includes everything from scheduling out what you eat to establishing a safe bedtime and morning routine. Safe bedtime for me yesterday. Oh gosh, I got to sleep pretty late yesterday here. And here it's about 8:17 a.m. for me, and so I think I'm doing pretty good after all of the, I guess the event and the celebration and the spectacle of the documentary film that I was screening. Yeah, it's so that I got going so, I suppose, efficiently and effectively this morning. It's not a wonder, but it's pretty great because I do have really safe bedtimes, secure bedtimes, pretty reliable and dependable sort of bedtimes and morning routines myself. Safe spaces, having a calming area where you can retreat and relax when you're feeling overwhelmed can make a huge difference. And so if you're going to be visiting family or friends or, I don't know, certain gatherings or whatnot, it'd probably be a good idea to find out where those spaces are so you can regulate or stabilize yourself or just feel more, I don't know, comfortable in where you're at, if you need to remove yourself and find some relaxation, in a certain space at a certain time. Emotional regulation tools, learning to identify and label your feelings with tools like emotion scales can help you process emotions more effectively. And that's something that helped me out. I kept an emotional journal for a while when I was actually misdiagnosed as bipolar, just to understand. I was told to do that to understand, my manic sort of, well, alleged manic sort of periods and then depressive sort of periods, or the peaks and troughs of bipolar disorder. And I started, writing in this emotional journal daily. And I just found out I don't know how to feel about this. I don't know how to feel about that. This is happening. It was more just me talking about situations happening, right? Events happening in a sort of linear way, but not so much how I felt about them. And then I started to understand how I probably ought to feel about them. And that was very helpful for me to understand, how I'm supposed to feel about something and talking about what that means, supposed to feel about. Like, why am I supposed to be in love with this or supposed to be happy with that? Because I started to see the bigger picture, and that was helpful, keeping that type of journal. I don't really need to do that sort of thing anymore, but yeah, that sort of tool. Yeah, that sort of tool was instrumental, which was great. Cognitive behavioral therapy. That's actually something that I did undergo too, or that was applied to me. And CBT can help you reframe negative thoughts and challenge those rumination cycles. And it is important to find what works best for you. And CBT, in short, I had that described as, if you can't change the stimulus, change the response. And yeah, that worked out well for me, but just talking about what the stimulus was and talking about what a potential response could be, was just great. Talk therapy was very helpful for me. It was just so vital. There we go. Okay, so let's put mindfulness into practice. Okay, let's think about a 2-minute guided breathing exercise. And I find this to be an excellent thing to put into practice when I'm starting to have maybe repetitive thoughts, or when I ought to have repetitive thoughts, and it tends to stop the negative thoughts in its tracks. So I did it briefly just a moment ago. So let's do this for just 2 minutes. So I'm looking at the clock right now. So let's, again, close our eyes and breathe like the ocean sounds, right? The tide coming in, the tide going out. Taking time to observe thoughts without judgment. Yeah, see your thoughts, see what you're thinking about. It's just there. I've had some people talk about it like it's just sitting in a box. See it in that box. It's just a thought. It's just an idea. And seeing it as an idea allows us to break the cycle of rumination. With your eyes closed, right? Sense your feet, sense your legs, your hips, your torso. Sense yourself. Reconnect with the present moment. There we go. That's been 2 minutes. And that was just 2 minutes. Golly, isn't that great? Here. Move ahead here. Now, seeking professional support, which can be so very important and so very necessary, right? While self-help strategies are valuable, sometimes you need extra support. And it's up to you when it's time to seek professional help. Okay. And when is that, right? When is that time? When rumination is significantly impacting your daily life. Okay. Or when you're feeling overwhelmed or unable to manage your thoughts on your own. Right? Or when you're experiencing co-occurring mental health challenges like anxiety or depression. Okay. And so I encourage you to seek out therapists specializing in autism. Okay. And there are so many resources, websites, organizations for finding qualified professionals. And I'll talk about those in a moment. Okay. But the few that, or the couple that come up, or that I do consider, and I've got links. Hopefully you can see them at the top, and some of them I was just presenting to the police, and we talk about how sometimes things don't go the way that we think that they ought to. And yeah, NAMI is a great resource for mental health sort of concerns or, urgent sort of situations. And here, let's advance it a bit. There we go. And now I'd love to open it up to questions and discussion, perhaps what's on your mind. Okay. And this is your chance, or anyone's chance. And I can talk about too, if there are no questions, to explore the importance of neurodiversity and share my own thoughts and experiences, here, let's begin there. And there's the thank you. So I'll just skip ahead right there. Let's go back to Zoom here, stop share. There. Let's bring me, good. Okay. So there. Okay. So yeah, some of the experiences that I've had that have been very, very illuminating and enlightening. I mean, even I just had some yesterday, having conversations about, but, at the beginning of my own journey, right, finding out how it is that I'm supposed to, I don't know, process all of this, or, really understand. They're going to bring me, or there's the chat. Okay, good. So, yeah, how it is that I'm supposed to understand, how it was that I was supposed to understand a lot of what was going on. So with the specialist that I had begun to work with, her name was Karita, and Karita would ask me certain questions that would lead me to a certain type of insight about I don't know, a certain topic or a certain subject, and I hadn't really discussed things in a certain way, or ideas in a certain way until that point. And that was just so helpful. And that started to break cycles right away. Someone just with an objective, or hopefully an objective point of view, asking me about, well, what do you think about this? And how do you think that that works? And what do you think the outcome ought to be? It was a lot of thinking, and it was a lot of, understanding, and it was a lot of a new sort of approach or new sort of vantage point that I had on situations that I had been experiencing. And for me, I was just so totally lost emotionally, or I suppose internally, about a lot of what was going on in my own life. For me, I had experienced a loss, several life events. I don't know about catastrophic, but very problematic life events. And I guess most people would call them negative ones too. There was a lot that I was supposed to be grieving about that I didn't even understand how that worked. Like intellectually I understood it, but emotionally and relationally too, I didn't understand how I was supposed to grieve. And so, yeah, I began to go through those sort of steps and understand why those steps exist, or the stages, the stages of grieving, and what I was supposed to do and how I was supposed to do that. Now, do I actually need to do that myself all the time? Does anyone actually need to do that all the time? I'm not really certain about that one, but yeah, but for me, that really helped out, because then I learned, oh, okay, so this is why people do this. This is why, I suppose, typical individuals will process this in this way. And so much more of the world began to make sense to me, which was very, very excellent. And how I could integrate myself into this sort of world, or integrate into this sort of system, which was very, very nice. That was very nice. Like when I could actually, I just said it yesterday, like I couldn't hear, I'm being abstract now, or sort of figurative. I couldn't hear the music, so I couldn't dance along with everyone else, or kind of go through the motions, right? Or follow the steps. But all of a sudden, because of these, again, methods and this approach and these therapies and these discussions that I was going through, you know, um, and I guess participating in, and actually I figured out that CBT was going on too, and some ABA, and so applied behavioral analysis, and I figured out that was going on too, without it just being explained to me that this is what we're going to. It's not like I didn't give consent to that. This individual, this professional, was trying to sort of reach me and make certain that I could begin to learn and be more ordered, But I did pick up on that's what was going on. I was like, oh, okay, you're asking this question to allow me to, sense, as we had been talking about, sense myself, or have a better sense of self, and because of that, that's going to, allow me to be more successful, and more able and more capable. And she was like, yeah, that's why I'm doing this. And I was like, oh, wow. And that's for finding patterns. That's what I had been doing my whole life. It's just finding out, okay, what is going on? How is it that it goes on? How does it impact me? And am I supposed to, again, participate? And I suppose that's maturing or something like that, and being more intelligent or smart, and yeah, that was really helpful for me. And it doesn't look like there's too many questions. We got 1 minute left. And so I ought to say thank you so much. Yeah, no, there are no questions. Yeah. Thank you for, allowing me to join you. Thank you for allowing me to present on this topic. Thank you for allowing me to help you relax, and anyone who watches this in the future, to relax and to really know, you know, that understanding autistic rumination is the first stop to managing it, and the first step to managing it, the first stage, the first level. It's the beginning, knowing empowers you so much. So thank you so much for allowing me to let individuals know how they can know about something. Okay. And I really appreciate all of you for taking the time, okay, to attend this presentation. In the future, like now, those who have attended, you have attended, and attending to me and me attending to you. This has been so great. And perhaps I know I'll get to do it again in the future. That'd be nice. So goodbye.